Let's dive into the truth about why the majority of people have no idea what their life's purpose is. The funny thing is, we've actually known it all along. We just buried it under everyone else's definition of success. I'm going to guide you through figuring this out right now in this video. Let me start by telling you how I found my true North Star. About 6 years ago, I was having to clean my Airbnb sheets from a turnover on my lunch break from my day job. I remember feeling exhausted. I was wondering, whose life am I actually living? Today I'm sharing not just what I discovered about finding my purpose, but the exact framework that changed everything. I'm going to share the precise steps in discovering your authentic purpose from underneath the noise. And listen, this isn't about quitting your job tomorrow or having some spiritual revelation. This is about feeling in your chest when you know something is off. When success feels empty. When achievement tastes unflavorful. Picture this, one of my Airbnb properties. My phone's buzzing from booking notifications. The busyness is thriving. Bank accounts growing, everyone's impressed. But as I was sitting there folding the laundry, I had a thought that wouldn't leave. Whose dream is this? See, we're taught to ask, what's my purpose? Like it's something we create from scratch. Like we're supposed to manufacture this meaning out of thin air. But neuroscience tells us something different. When people serve others, their brains light up like a Christmas tree. Dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, all of it. Your brain is literally wired for purpose, but not the kind you think. The psychologist Abraham Maslow discovered that children have what's called impulse voice, natural inclination that guides them towards the authentic interest. But here's what happens. Teacher expectations layer on top, then parental career aspirations, peer pressure, social media, real estate success podcasts playing in your ear every morning while you convince yourself that passive income is the path to freedom. I was listening to those podcasts daily. Every morning, another story about someone retiring at 30 through real estate and entrepreneur endeavors. The influence wasn't just external, though. It was a cocktail of a person in my life pushing me, and our whole hustle culture that whispers, sacrifice today's happiness for tomorrow's wealth at all costs. But sitting on that couch, I realized something. I wasn't building wealth. I was building someone else's version of success. And it was killing me slowly, one Airbnb turnover at a time. Here's what I want you to understand about purpose. It's not something you find. It's something you remember. When I was maybe 10 years old, I had this obsession. Not video games, yes, that, but it was drawing these elaborate puzzle skate parks where the little figures looked like they were in motion. This will age me, but I had an old computer game called The Incredible Machine, where you create these reaction puzzles. I was creating that on paper, these Rube Goldberg chain reactions, where one thing triggered after another. I can still remember those mapped out, intricate cause and effect sequences. But it went beyond paper. I rigged up some motors and some string engineering to turn on and off my light switch for my bed. My parents thought I was tinkering. Maybe he'll be an engineer. I thought I was just playing. But here's some insight I learned that resonated with me. Every person carries what could be called their core blueprint, a combination of your genetic makeup and a formation of experiences that creates your individual purpose. These childhood obsessions, they're not random. They're your brain showing you its natural inclinations, the things that captivated you as a child, before society told you what was practical or prestigious, were actual signals, your deepest self, about what you were meant to pursue. Your authentic interests emerge early, before conditioning takes over. They present the intersection of your innate talents and the experiences that shaped your worldview, creating a unique direction that belongs to you alone. Psychologists identifies 5 types of intelligence: verbal, mathematical, kinesthetic, social, and musical. Your brain naturally gravitates towards one of the two. Fighting against the grain is like trying to cut wood against the grain. It's possible, but exhausting and inefficient. Mine was creating creative art, cause and effect connections, visual problem solving, creative engineering. And then I spent the next 20 years looking for other financial gains at all costs, because that's what successful people do, right? Dr. James Hollis calls this the first half of life. When we adopt the external demands, develop ego strength, ask, what does the world want from me? But then there's supposed to be a second half where you ask different questions. What wants to live in this world through me? That little kid drawing puzzle skate parks, he wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't building a portfolio. He was just following his fascination with how things connect and move, creative expression, how one small action could set a beautiful sequence of events. When I was 21, I remember being on a boat with some friends. Life feeling pretty perfect in a small hometown. We're laughing, someone telling a story about the weekend. And I'm thinking about, this is it. I'm comfortable with these familiar faces and predictable rhythms. Then I got home and I checked my email, and there was an invitation to a job offer by MTV. They want me full-time as a creative animator to move to Chicago, to leave everything behind. My first reaction was excitement, quickly washed over by fear. This wasn't just a job offer, this was changing my life completely. Is it safe and familiar or ambitious and alive? You know what everyone said? That's risky, a big city, huh? Chicago's expensive. What if it doesn't work out? You're just gonna move home, right? Because they don't want the change. They want the consistency. Our brains literally release different chemicals when you're serving your authentic purpose versus when you're just surviving. When I thought about staying in my hometown, my body left heavy, like I was already tired from a future I hadn't lived yet. When I thought about Chicago, despite the fear, there was this electricity that ran through me. Terror, yes, but it's mixed with something else, aliveness, hope. The resistance I felt, it wasn't wisdom, it was fear dressed up as caution, to stay comfortable. There's something inside you that knows things before your conscious mind figures them out. Call it intuition, call it deeper self. It's that transcendent force that sees beyond your everyday awareness. Your calling whispers, leave what's comfortable, step into the unknown, and seek your yearning. This requires courage to venture into the unknown parts of yourself and your life. It involves the battle with resistance. Your conscious mind wants safety, predictability, and the known path. Your deeper self requires growth, and this requires being uncomfortable. This call comes as restlessness, as dreams that won't let go, as opportunities that both excite and terrify you. It's the voice that says there's more when you're settling for less. Easy to ignore, but be daring to answer back, it's time to leave for your adventure. And in that leaving, find not just adventure, find your true self. But here's the thing about finding purpose. Sometimes you have to learn what it's not before you understand what is. Halfway through my web design career, I'm sitting at my desk and I swear I can find my soul leaking out through my fingertips on my keyboard. The same tasks, the same work routines, the same screen, the same characters. I started fantasizing about real work, physical work. The grass had to be greener on the other side, if I use my hands, right? So I jumped ship. I went to IT industry first, working with cables and servers and software for small businesses. And you want to know what's way more boring than designing websites? Configuring router settings for 8 hours. It was like I traded one screen for an even duller screen. Then I went even further into the electrical trades, become an electrical apprentice, finally physical work, real tools. First I loved the novelty, then reality hit. I was in the attic in July, sweating, pulling wires through some conduit. I could hear my coworker complain about another fight he had with his wife. He's going out for another cigarette break and he's in his late 40s. And I thought, I do not want that to be me. Have I made a terrible mistake? I made creativity my enemy because I was bored with expression of it. Master Shi Heng Yi talks about this, how we mistake the container for the contents. I thought sitting at the desk was the problem. The real problem was I wasn't creating anything meaningful. I was just executing someone else's vision. Psychologists call this complexes. These unconscious patterns and take over our decision making. I developed a complex that computer work meant boring work. So I ran towards the opposite, but you can't run from your nature. You can only deny it. And denial is exhausting. Sometimes what feels liberating is actually another form of imprisonment. After years of rigid discipline and structure, the natural response is to rebel completely, to abandon all constraints and dive into chaos. But the swing in the opposite extreme often reveals that discipline was never the real problem. The true cage isn't the structure itself, but the lack of genuine purpose behind it. The issue isn't whether we have discipline or freedom, routine or spontaneity. It's whether we understand the deeper why behind our actions. Without the foundational understanding of purpose, both rigid control and complete chaos become different versions of the same prison. Years into my search of meaning, I'm profoundly lonely. Successful by external measure, but disconnected from anything real. Then one night, I'm sitting by a campfire with some recently new friends. The wood was crackling and it was a warm evening. And I was talking about something I've been thinking about, something I was implementing in my life. Probably some revelation from a book I'd read or some experience I processed. I don't exactly remember. And this person across from me, their face half lit from the fire, said, "Wow, I never thought of it that way. I'm glad you're here tonight because I learned something from you." That sentence hit different more than any other compliment from my work skills, possessions, or positive Airbnb reviews. It was that someone had finally seen me, not for my achievements, not for my productivity, but my actual contribution to the world. There's this exercise where you ask your best friend why you're friends, and you keep pushing until they stop describing what you do and start describing who you are. That moment by the fire, that was my friend accidentally telling me my purpose. I wasn't valuable because I could code, create cool things, pull electrical wire, manage properties. I was valuable because I could take my experiences, all those failed attempts, all those chain reaction drawings, all those moments of recognition, and transform them into something that helped others see their own lives differently. Neuroscientists talk about how dopamine isn't released when you get the reward. It's released when you're moving towards something meaningful. For example, the buzz I felt, that was my brain recognizing alignment for the first time in years. The research on helper's high shows that serving others activates the same neural pathways as addictive substances. Unlike those substances, the high doesn't diminish with repetition. It compounds. Every story shared, every insight that lands, every "I never thought of it that way," it builds on itself. Now I need to tell you about the hardest part, and it's probably why you're still watching. It's about expressing yourself authentically and honestly. We live in a world that rewards performance, but punishes authenticity. Get enthusiastic mid-conversation, you're too much. Let energy move through you freely, that's unprofessional. Our modern society is designing to give us quick dopamine fixes to keep us content, but not fulfilled. Like opium for the masses, except now it's notifications and likes and productivity hacks that will finally make us worthy. Here's what I've learned. That resistance you feel being fully yourself, it's programming. We must start to unveil our shadow selves. The parts of ourselves we've learned to hide. Your enthusiasm, your weird interests, your way of seeing connections others miss. You know what's exhausting? Not being authentic. That's exhausting. I'm not saying go dance on tables tomorrow. I'm saying notice when you hold back something true. Notice when you perform serious adult. Notice when you choose familiar suffering over unfamiliar authenticity. Ancient texts point to the same truth. You already know your purpose. That small voice within you, that part of you knows exactly who you are when all the noise stops. So how do you actually find this purpose that's been buried under everyone else's expectations? Let me give you the exact framework that changes everything for me. Question 1. Who am I called to serve? Not who can pay me the most, not who's the easiest to reach. Who do you genuinely want to help? For me, it was the people like the person at the campfire, seekers who are one insight away from breakthrough. Question 2, what problem am I called to solve? Look at your own struggles. I struggled with disconnection from authentic creativity. I struggled with the loneliness from achievement without meaning. Those struggles were not accidents. They're records of life's service. Question 3, how am I called to solve it? This is where your childhood fascinations come back. But here's the part that most people miss. You have to validate this with 3 criteria. Peace. When I sold the Airbnbs, I felt more peaceful with less money than I ever felt with more. That's a signal. Passion. The kind where you do it even if no one's watching. Where time disappears, not because you're distracted, but because you're absorbed. Provision. Can you sustain yourself? Because sacrificing yourself isn't real purpose, it's just another way of feeding your ego. I started this by talking about sitting down on my Airbnb couch, exhausted, living someone else's dream. But here's what I understand now. You have to get lost and appreciate being found. Your purpose is your childhood obsessions, your failed experiments, your moments of unexpected joy, your weird fascinations that have just been told aren't practical. We worship the human brain because it's the greatest creation in the known universe, but we use it to follow someone else's blueprint instead of recognizing our own unique writing. Start small. What bothers you that you could fix? What lights you up that you've been dismissing? What did you love before someone else told you it wasn't serious enough? Your purpose is already there, waiting, not in the future after one more achievement, not in the past that you can't recover. Right now, right here, in the space between who you've been told to be and who you actually are. The question isn't, what's my purpose? The question is, am I brave enough to live it? Thanks for being here, Pioneer.